Namaste. Thank you for being here with us. I'm here with a guest today who has been on with me so many times that I really cannot call her a guest. She's just so much friend and soul family and almost like blood family. We're so close at this point. So, yeah, one of the few people I actually trust to interview me absolutely perfectly. Thank you for being here. And thank you for your work just last week. You were interviewing me just last week. This is the lovely Candace Carl Goldman from quantumhealingpractitioners.com, who is the founder of Beyond Quantum Healing. And it's an amazing process. And I can't wait until she's ready to share it with you and the world. So, yeah, we are here today. And the reason why we're here today is because after so many channelings, I think for the past 3 years, you guys, have been watching me channel the Elohim beings. I'm primarily, the voice of the Elohim, which means that they choose me as their channel, and quite a few other people as well. I'm not that special to be able to stand forth and clearly channel them. So these are archangels and Christ conscious beings, ascended masters of all varieties, and that's been going on for a while. And then I noticed so many changes. I'm here and within my purpose for awareness, which is an ascension related purpose. And I noticed as I was observing the human conscious collective making so many changes in ascension, it just wasn't getting too fun for the human conscious collective. And I started to really think about it as I was channeling oneness. This is when this all came up, maybe about a month ago. I channeled a source group of collective beings who call themselves by many things, but primarily oneness, the one, Adonai. These are the same things. I think there's another channel out there too who channels them. Her name is Rasha. She's amazing. Her book is called Oneness. She channels the same groups as I do. So when I began to channel them, they started to tell me about how humanity is having a very difficult time in ascension processes. And I thought, well, why not speak to and for humanity as a collective? And my favorite phrase lately, for those of you who are following my classes over on Patreon, my favorite phrase is, why not? Why not? So I started really getting into the space of wonder about it, and it was difficult. I have had probably the most difficult periods of time in my life over the course of the past 4.5, 5 weeks since I posted this channeling, just observing humanity. And I'm a non-duality teacher. So these kind of things aren't supposed to bother me, right? Because normally oneness will come and say, well, we're all one, and this is an illusion, and this is your dream, and here's why it's happening. And I'm like, you know what? That's just not helping me right now. I need a lot more information about why people are suffering, what's going on at the global warming level, climate changes, wars, things that I've been seeing coming up between now and 2028 to 2032. I've been seeing various things beginning around 2025 from Yeshua, from Nostradamus, so many of the beings I channel. And finally, I just thought, well, why not ask source that represents humans? Not that all of them don't, because they do. But it feels, when you're channeling the human conscious collective, a bit like soul essence channeling, which is what I do when I channel one person inside yourself, except this one person is all of us. And when I started channeling the human conscious collective, they started talking about spiritual principles and ways that we can make major shifts so that being here in these incarnated experiences would not be so difficult, because people are having tremendously painful spiritual awakenings. So that's how it all got started. What do you think, Candace?
I think I keep thinking about the image of the wringing out and how much pain I too have been observing, and you're right. You can just hear it enough times about it's all an illusion and all of that, and some of the answers, but it still hurts so much. So this is such an amazing idea. I know there's so many people looking forward to the information that's going to come forth today.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a clear conscious channeling because I want to be observant and really feeling the human in me while I go through this. I'm not just going to trance out because that's easy for me. I want to experience what all of you experience simultaneously as a collective and feel with you right there in your heart centers exactly what we're all meant to feel together, because this is going to be beautiful and painful and definitely informative. So let's begin. What question are you seeing there that's really pulling you, Candace?
Well, I think it's the very first one that I see. Why do we feel the need to suffer? And along with that question is asked, why, if we are all connected, where did the thought of separation come from?
In order to see oneself as separated, one must believe that something different from pure love, pure unity, pure oneness must exist. In order to expand, one must observe oneself, and this is where the idea of separation began. With suffering, why do you feel the need to suffer? The truth is, you don't have to. It is only an initial stage of frequency for expansion that you observe, and the whole purpose, when we began to separate and expand into integral fractals of incarnated beings, the whole purpose was to feel a different frequency, any different frequency. And initially, we did not relate it to suffering. We related it simply to curiosity, wonder. What is this? What is this? It is a striking feeling of pain. Then what? Pain initially did not become suffering until it stayed for too long. And much like any frequency that would stay for too long, it began to permeate into us at a cellular nature. And when this situation arose, this is when things got awry in the collective. The only constant is change. No matter what you feel, you are here to feel everything and stop before it goes to suffering and shift into a different feeling state. And it doesn't matter what feeling state. That is what our contracts are for. And we can choose. It's all about the power of our will, the power of our determination, the empowerment frequency of our choice. And just to realize that we have it. When this occurs, suffering does not. That answer that they gave to you really was interesting to me, because most of the time since I channel oneness and non-dualistic perspectives, I'm looking at this like, well, that wasn't dualistic, that wasn't non-dualistic, that just was. I'm always trying to frame something into a teaching that I understand.
They basically said suffering is optional, or you can go through it, and then move to the next thing.
Yeah. You don't even go through it. It feels like, okay, this is the image they're giving me in my head right now that I'm seeing very clearly. You get signals when you put your hand on something hot. Do you know how quickly you normally move your hand from a stove if it's hot? It's so fast, and that's natural. That's not primitive. That's very advanced to be able to overcome pain. So before you even think about that, do you know sometimes, and they're giving me other examples, sometimes when you almost stump your toe, but you lift it up very quickly right before you do, or say you have an accident and it could have been 1,000 times worse, but you moved a certain way and prevented it. Say you had a crick in your neck and you woke up in the middle of the night and it was getting bad and you thought, oh, I better lift up my pillow and elevate my head. It's paying attention to the unique signals that happen so that your energy frequency state does not become suffering at some point. That point can be further down the road. That point can be right away. It's so that we can listen is the deeper answer, so that we can connect to our own universal consciousness and listen to universal heartbeat very quickly.
Very good. The next question I see asks the human collective how we should be taking care of our 3D bodies during this process of spiritual awakening.
They're saying back to listening when that occurs. It's listening to how you feel, listening to your thoughts, listening, yes, to your egos. They are relevant, validating, without holding yourself or others accountable, without judgments and attachments to what you fear might become bad, what you fear is evil, what you fear may become suffering. Before any of that occurs, you are listening without a judgment of something bad. Without saying what it will be, you release your fear of uncertainty. So during this, when you are taking care of your bodies, stop worrying about what will hurt your bodies and what won't, and ask your body, what do they want right now and what do they need right now? There are many different ways that the human body in particular cannot process the poisonous foods that are all across your lands. We can't process these foods, they're saying. These aren't foods. These are manufactured. Anything genetically modified, don't. If it has poisons in it, the organics in it, they don't want us to. We can't tolerate that, the collective is saying. Go back to the times when food was food. They're showing me an image of being on my grandfather's, my granny and my papa's land, and I grew up way out in a rural background, and we had plenty of acres of a garden, and I don't ever remember my granddad using pesticides, so there were always bugs on things. And we never thought anything about it. It was completely natural. We didn't have that thought process to put pesticides on our food. We were like, what? Why would we do that? You just spray the bugs off. So I know that sounds simple, and perhaps for people who are experiencing, more industrialized farming, that might be a harder scenario, but you're going to have to think outside of the box with your farming, is what they're saying, and pay attention to what you're putting in your bodies. Because it's not going to help you feel really good. The point of being human is to feel good in a body, not to ignore a body, not to ascend to the point that you don't recognize that you have one. While you do not identify that you are your body, you are grateful that it is your tool and it is your servant. And if you had a loyal servant to you, would you not treat them like the best family that you could possibly have? So that's the case. If you have hired help in your life, do you treat them poorly? Do you give them terrible food with poisons on them? No, you're thankful. We're all one. We're all family. Be one with your body. Your body is serving you. Your physical body is serving your light body. Emotional cleansing. It is incredibly pertinent to, as humans call it, we all say be grounded. And we all state to cleanse, and we have certain spiritual practice. Energetically releasing the way of the religious practice is really important, because you cannot be in a body separated within sex and religions, sex, SECTS, and religions, because that promotes less unity. And the point of being human is to be united and connected. Emotional cleansing, energetic cleansing, physical cleansing, detoxification, as we have called it. Many things are relevant here. From your environments, from your skies, from your foods and lands, from everything, there is some level of toxicity that you have created from the etheric, emotional, and spiritual states. It comes into a physicality. So it must be released and cleansed on all levels, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, because what is the point of choosing separation if you're going to ignore all the fractals that you have created?
Early on in your answer, they said this concept of uncertainty, not to go into uncertainty. I might ask a follow-up of where does the concept, the feeling, this thing that we call uncertainty, where does that come from? What's the origin of uncertainty in the human conscious collective?
Lack of trust breeds fear. Fear is the current biggest problem that creates disempowerment and lack in the human conscious life, that you cannot be out of control. This is a state of imbalance in your societies and in the collectives all around the world. This state of cultural imbalance, collective imbalance everywhere. If you do not trust, you create further separation and you attempt to control what is beyond your control. You attempt to control so that you cannot be controlled. We understand the fear. But you cannot release fear while continuing to grasp it and cling to it and hold to it as if it is your truth. The more you attempt to control your lives without acceptance, without forgiveness, without release of judgments of what is, more uncertainty will be there.
The next question I see is, what can we do to help heal and shift all of the unhealthy manifestations of human sexuality? Things like shame, abuse, exploitation, objectification, etc. And of course, the whole human trafficking thing comes to mind.
When you are connecting to universal heartbeat, to the heart of all consciousness, to your own heart, and you understand the goodness of sex, if you can start there in an innocent way, this is a return to human innocence, and define sexuality in your own ways without the infiltration of other evil or bad definitions from any childhood experiences, from outside influences. Sex must be discovered uniquely between you and your bodies. And when that has been infiltrated and abused, this permeates through with negative core beliefs that cause you to determine that sex is bad, sex is evil, sex is something that you judge. Work on the release of all of those beliefs that cause the judgments and find your innocent inner child. They are there somewhere, waiting on your discovery, waiting on your validation, waiting on your love. And when you are loving that level of yourself and you give permission to forgive what happened to you or to someone, to forgive what you have done to others, forgiveness is the answer to this so that you can return to innocence in relation to your own sexuality.
A really great question to follow this up is the one that comes right after. Teresa asks, tell us about heart listening and ways that heart listening manifests in the physical as knowing. What are the connections we observe in the body? Listen to your heart.
It will not always manifest as knowing. The connection you observe in your body is that when there is a heart listening, it is being overwhelmed positively with a gentle feeling, a trusting love. And it is also in the mind an aha moment. And many of you have created this synonymous with the light bulb that goes on above your heads. And you go, oh, that's also the element of wonder and surprise when you positively feel connected to a thought or an idea. Heart listening can be very gentle, but also very joyful. And when you are listening to what is needed for the most greatest good at this moment, then you will feel inspired. You will feel a sense of wonder and curiosity, followed by trust, love, and overwhelming excitement. This will create inspired action. Inspired action is one of the 4 basic principles that is needed in the human conscious collective at this time. We are speaking to you, and you are speaking to us. We are you. Listen and then formulate all of the feelings, trust them, and become inspired to act. Be the change you wish to see in your collective.
I think you just answered the next question with that question's answer, but let's see if there's a little bit more that might be added. What healing is most needed at this time for the greatest good, and how can we be a catalyst in bringing about that?
We can be a catalyst by our examples. When you are observing that others are paying attention, you seem to be observant of your own words. The powerful frequency of your language is one of the most powerful frequencies that exist, your human language. Connecting to the Satnam, the name of Source. And that is one, and that is a foundation. There are many that you have identified. Connecting to the divine sound current, which is the frequency of all that is love. These are ways that you can connect to your healing for the greatest good. Catalyst is not always needed. An activator is, however. Sometimes a catalyst will activate a person in a neutral way, in a positive way, in a loving way. Sometimes a catalyst can be there as a reflector going through their own interconnective experiences in order to show someone what they have learned or what they need to learn. Do not produce greater levels of separation for the catalysts and the activators who are attempting to awaken you. Listen, observe, simply listen without assuming anything, that you are true, that their statements are true, that anything is right, that anything is wrong. No judgments about their intentions. Just listen without knowing what is going on. This is trust.
Okay, here's a question about how we can tell the difference between our higher self speaking through us or other beings like angelic beings. How do we tell the difference when we are beginning to hear these things?
This is dependent upon what stages a human is feeling. For example, if they don't trust, if they are healing through core beliefs of feeling isolated and alone, abandoned, then they feel disconnected and they don't particularly understand what it would feel to connect to an angel, but only to themselves and their own fearful thoughts. And then it becomes obvious. They have no point of reference to the love that an angel would exude in their presence. For one, understand that when you connect to angelics and you have been coming from nothing but negativity and fear and pain and suffering, do not be so quick to dismiss what you don't understand. Angelics are not always positive. They are rarely negative. And they are often neutral and balanced. If you expect overwhelming positivity, overwhelming love from the angelics, that could be a perception that you are not within your frequencies ready to handle, which is why angelics present often as neutral and almost androgynous in their appearance and effect. Be prepared for something you don't understand, and don't be afraid of what you don't understand. This is the only way to begin to tell the difference, and then release the difference. How could they ever be better than you? Are they here to present themselves as higher than you? Does more learned mean better or more powerful? This is up to you to discern.
Here's a general question about what the most important message is for us to hear and know right now.
It's not going to be what you're thinking it's going to be. So many of you have come to us with questions about how can you help the society and why are many natural disasters occurring, what you can do about them, how you can help the climate on Earth, and how you can help each other. And these all tie in our answers. Why are all of these natural disasters increasing? These cyclical changes occur and account for approximately 30% of the underlying causes of the natural disasters that you are witnessing. There are eternal and universal spiritual laws that are the cause of natural disasters and your climate change. It is a law of nature that whatever has been created is sustained and eventually destroyed. But if you are clinging to fear about a natural process of dissolution, then how can you ever understand why you chose to come here to be creators? We call this the law of creation, sustenance, and eventually dissolution. Everything returns back to creation, and nothing is wrong in this cycle. For example, when mountain ranges were created, you understand that they will be sustained and eventually destroyed. And thus, whenever something is created in this world, after a period of sustenance, it can be expected that at some point it will be destroyed. Only Creator, which is who humans call God, remains steady and unchanging. And the only change that we urge you to understand and accept is change itself. That is the only constant. And if the only constant is change, but you are terrified still of change, then you are not ready to be human. And this is why you have suffering. Destruction comes in many forms, natural disasters being one of them. The human race also facilitates this cyclical destruction process by our behavior, which sometimes culminates in war and greed and devastation, which counts for the remaining 70%. The effect on the human race, the effect of the human race on nature at a physical level, we would state at this time is approximately 19%. The effect of the human race on nature at a psychological level, 19%. The effect of the human race on nature at a spiritual level, 25%. Nature's effect on you, 7%. Nature cannot affect you as much as you believe that it does. The human race and nature affect one another, and we find that humans exert influence on the climate to an extent of 90%, whereas nature simply reacts to humans' influence to an extent of just 10% through these disasters. Each and every one of us is made up of 3 subtle, fundamental components. And this is important to hear. The different permutations of these 3 subtle foundational components define a person's human nature. Qualities in an individual's personality, such as cleanliness or not, truthfulness or not, calmness, humility, generosity or not. It is all there, but from a peaceful standpoint, the truthfulness, the calmness, the responsibility and cleanliness, generosity and giving, humility and ethics are signs of the predominant sattva component, which is needed more on this planet. Today, however, in the average person, the average human is filled more with the tama component, which is characterized by personal defects, if you will, from the ego, selfishness, greed, negative anger, aggressiveness, possessiveness, control, and thus people indiscriminately abuse the resources of Earth, contributing to an increase in natural disasters. Your behavior is heavily influenced by spiritual maturity. And just to give an example, the saints They are at a 70% spiritual level. And a saint will have respect towards all humans and all living beings on earth because they recognize God in all. And they will lovingly look after everything from living human beings to animals to non-living objects. Moreover, a saint's spiritual love of all of mankind will nurture, inspire, and motivate others to develop that same expansiveness in themselves. And this will create inspired action to change the planet. In contrast to this, people at a lower spiritual level, 20%, just to give an example, would have a high ego and being selfish, focusing only on achieving success for themselves and happiness strictly for themselves, often at the expense of nature, humans, and other living beings. And their behavior in declining spiritual consciousness results in a predominance of unrighteousness in the world today. And as a result, there is a rise in the tama in your environment. And that's also something that we call spiritual pollution. So then you have the presence of entities, negative, you call them ghost and whatnot. There are various forms from the subtle and spiritual dimension, and they capitalize on this increase in tama of the human race. They find it relatively easy to step in for partial possessions and make people return to primitive behavior. And at this point in the fight or flight return, within this primitive instinct, all of this only further adds to the tama in society, which leads to an increase in violence, unhappiness, depression, natural disasters, all of this that you are concerned about. And you have asked us, when will the effects of these natural disasters and the climate change begin to subside? And we have stated often through many channels throughout your earth, and we'll state through this one, we will provide the strong likelihood of catastrophic events of higher intensity happening unless humankind changes its ways and adopts a more compassionate lifestyle and adopts spiritual practice as per the universal 6 basic principles. And here they are: devotion or discipline, meditation, inspired action, forgiveness, wisdom, and grace. These catastrophes, these catastrophic events, whether they be war, rape and pillage of the land and the peoples, control financially, there are so many catastrophic events, not just natural. These events will come in the form of both unprecedented natural disasters and beyond. And that destruction that will follow will be a cleansing of the planet of humans who are more tama, which is violence induced in their basic nature, more primitive. You have asked for this shift, for this cleansing. The climate change and effects of the natural disasters will indeed get worse before they get better. And to give you an idea of this scale of destruction, the tsunami that hit Asia in 2004 created devastation that is approximately 1/1000th of the destruction that would happen to cleanse the planet of Tama. So the weather patterns and natural disasters will begin to start settling down after 2028, and will come back to normal in about 50 to 60 years from 2024. Here are some tips that will help you follow the universal basic principles of spiritual practice on earth for humans. Firstly, please know there are as many pathways to God as there are people. Never judge another's path. This is why we cannot recommend the same spiritual practice for all. In the human illusion or dream, as you call it, we're all different, not only physically but mentally. You must accept, forgive, and understand these differences. We have different amounts of free will, accumulated karma for learning, and different divine will, or what you call destiny or God's will. Sectarian religious practice are great risks. They go against the fundamental principle of spirituality. And this is that. There are as many temperaments as there are people and personality types. It doesn't help develop unity to join a religion, but rather promotes a feeling of separation from other humans and sects of religion. One is not able to feel human connection and unity in this, which is our concern. You have asked us, what can we do to help Earth? And our answer is your spiritual practice. If you are adopting a spiritual practice that is according to the 6 basic principles of spirituality, this is a sure way to increase love and unity on Earth. That spiritual practice has to be complemented with an open-minded. This cultural bias. Only when humans are clear about spiritual principles can we make decisions about how to guide and direct our practice. And this is how we help ourselves. Within the self-love of this practice, we will be ready to help others and to share this wisdom. So when you consider helping others, remember, no man is an island, and we are all a part of society together, here in unity. We are here to connect. No man can remain unscathed when the entire world is severely affected. Hence, it becomes imperative that we take steps to positively influence the world, because it consists of our loved ones, relatives, friends, associates, colleagues. And once you learn, practice, and understand your spiritual practice, tell others about it. Don't wait to be proficient or perfect yourself before sharing the love. Give more, serve more with compassion and time if you have not the funds. But if you have something, giving is just as wonderful as receiving, although both are necessary.
I'm following my intuition and jumping over a couple questions just for a moment to ask this question about science and atheism. There seems to be a large shift towards science and atheism among the human collective. How will this adapt or shift as we get further into Earth's ascension?
It is another sect. It is another religion. And the attempts to avoid something, what do? Then you create another form of separation, which may as well be as diversive and disconnected as a sect or a religion. It is harmful to consider science and atheism as one is the same. They are not one and the same. Science will begin to support spiritual principles as you are seeing today. Pay attention. You are noticing that science is beginning to finally step on board in certain dimensional experiences. There are 49% of you that currently reside in the 3rd dimension, 51 in 4th and 5th. And that too is not an equal split between the numbers in that 51%. What we're looking for is for everyone to be on the same page. We want to be on the same page with each other. But as long as we begin to define, this is science, this is spirit, this is God, this is anti-God, well, then that duality, we're observing that the same thing occurs, and one of 2 things could occur: separation or unity. And if you feel something that promotes separation, release it, cleanse it, avoid it, and do not take it as something to own, for it would not be divinely true.
Okay, back to food. What about people who just can't afford a high vibration diet? At least the ones who are unable to grow their own food. They won't be held in 3D, will they? As long as they bless what they eat?
Most can afford simple fruits and vegetables, and you do what you can and bless what you have, and be grateful for what you have. In your initial stages, as humans, in the primitive stages, during certain seasons, you picked fruits from trees. There were nuts and seeds. coming from trees, vegetables from the ground, and you harvested them plentifully during the appropriate seasons. And now, with all of this diversity and modern times in your hands, everything so much accessible, now you have culturally programmed yourselves to believe you must cook your food, you must have certain spices, you must do things a certain way. And that is the ego becoming involved a bit much. If you can live off of a banana and a piece of vegetable and proteins such as nuts and seeds, then you do. What are you lacking in that simple diet? Simplicity is what is needed, and that does not cost much. And you can receive this. These foods are plentiful in lands everywhere.
Okay. Sheila asks an interesting question about the human's autonomic nervous system, which is the fight, flight, and freeze system. If it's not functioning properly due to trauma, how can this person teach their body not to go into a shutdown state with strong emotion?
You are brilliant at creating many of your modalities. You have created one recently called trauma response therapy. And spiritual response therapy. You know how to train and deprogram your brains accordingly because you know that fear isn't true. With that wisdom, when you use wisdom as one of the 6 basic principles, and you trust this, you can release anything that is overactive and unnecessary and negative in its frequency. You can train your brain, your neurons, to synapse accordingly. The more you set your intention clearly on your brain, you are powerful creators in this regard.
Okay. Very good. Let's see. We have another one from Sheila about the government. When can we expect the government to shift from a place of corruption and control to a government that truly cares about people and not their own personal agenda?
There are portions of your third dimensional collectives that will care about their own agenda until their dissolution or destruction, as we implied earlier, that everything dissolves or destructs at a natural pace, because that frequency, as it minimalizes, it cannot be contained, and it will be overwhelmed by the 51%, as that 51% that are currently in the fourth and fifth dimensional collectives will grow into higher frequencies even, or at least become stronger in their numbers, then there will be a destruction and dissolution. So what if we could provide you with a vision that is more positive, as opposed to worrying about and being concerned about if your government cares, if they're in control? That is a big if. What if you did not operate in the land of the if, and you understand that you are in your control, and you begin to adopt this belief? Belief is the foundation of human creation. So if you understand that they can only control those in their collective, which is the 49% of the third dimension, and you are not there, then their control will not apply to you when you are ready to adopt this belief.
Very good. Maggie M. asks, what can we do to create and maintain the genuine heart-connected relationships that so many of us long to struggle and find and create?
The problem is that you treat them as though you would yourself. And if you treat others poorly because you treat yourself poorly, that energy is exchanged and returned. It is given and returned and given and returned and given and returned until the inevitable dissolution of the relationship, which means it wasn't a match. So our answer to you is, why struggle to maintain? If something in this question contains the word struggle, Release what you are struggling. It is not aligned and not a match to your expansion and what you need in your heart. When you honor what currently is in your heart, then you understand that you will give, and if it is not reciprocated, that too shall dissolve, and that is natural and necessary. Do not struggle to maintain something that is not of your frequency.
Here's a question about probabilities and the future. Since the future is based on probabilities that are constantly shifting, how certain is it that we are headed towards ascension of the collective?
Of course, a fourth dimensional being would ask us that question. And believe us when we state, those of you who are currently experiencing the fourth dimensional collective, anything can shift, anything can change. See that you are not personally in the fourth dimension, then you will not be, and it can shift that quickly. And the more you maintain that, the more you reside in the lower frequency. The greater the incidence and prevalence of your belief systems as they accommodate your society, you are creating and then accommodating a deeper grasp of expansion of what and who you are. And as this perpetuates within the laws of creation and then the service of, for a time, that sustenance, and then the dissolution, there are periods of time within each. It is impossible in the current stage of the human conscious collective to remain in any one frequency for any period of time, as it will inevitably dissolve when you expand to a higher frequency. This does not mean that you are choosing to stay in a lower frequency, but you are going through the natural cycles and progression of your God self.
Perfect. I think you might have touched on this next one before, but we have a question about all of the concepts and teachings that are out there. And what are the really basic things that we as humans can practice to aid in this expansion and the shifting of higher of our frequency?
The concept of self-realization, and as we had stated, within the universal laws, there is not one temperament that suits one person. There is not one spiritual practice that suits one person, but self-realization is the highest practice that most can strive towards attaining. And it is a goal, and it will have times when it suits you and times when it does not. There are many practices, many modalities, and you will shift in and out of them as necessary. The point is not to focus so much on the choice, but simply to allow what is in any given moment of acceptance. And when you need a different one,
Pamela, I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? We've lost your audio.
can you hear me now?
Can hear you now. Did not hear that last completed of the last question.
They said every modality that you will need will, just as per the laws of the universe, it will come, it will be created, it will be sustained for the time when you need it, and then this too shall pass. In other words, it will dissolve when you no longer need it to make room for another expansion of a higher modality based upon your need. So in other words, back to what they were saying about how there are as many spiritual practices as there are human beings and as many spiritual temperaments for each human being, they can't answer that for you because somewhere along in your journey, you're going to need something different.
I love that answer so much because of the things I'm focusing on. Thank you so much. Here's a question about, aren't we in essence energy? And if energy can't be created or destroyed, why would we see ourselves as separate from the creator and believe that we were created? Aren't we just source experiencing self?
We are happy that you have chosen to realize this divine truth, and we would not deny it. But the power of being human is to play within the matrix of illusion, to dream and to create with bodies, as tools of expression because we can.
Good. Here's a question about timing in this year. What major things do you see happening this year of 2018? Where will we be by the end of this year?
Here's one that you're really concerned about: net neutrality. You're concerned about your devices, and it will turn around for the positive, and it will be better for what you believe. You will not believe this as we state it to you, but it will end up being something completely different and more positive than you care to imagine. Another thing, your president will be the catalyst that causes an upbringing and then a cleansing and dissolution of all who were in prior candidacies. Many lies will be revealed and are being revealed. Many cover-ups. All of this is because the ethics of humans are rising. You are understanding, and you are still considering duality of right and wrong. But when ethics rise and you put it into control, this is the catalyst in the president that although you did not choose, he was not voted in by you. He's there to cleanse something great so that the third dimensional collectives collapse before the year 2030. Your governments will be completely different.
Here's a question I'm not sure I understand myself, but maybe you would understand it. Is it true that if we go into a certain country or place while we are in a certain age, we will experience positive change in our lives? I believe it is called the Mercury Meridian. What does the human collective have to say about the Mercury Meridian?
You create this dream within your illusion-based realities quite often, and therefore in that belief system, if you align to it, it will indeed occur and become very real for you. It is as real as the astrology that you have created to be real.
Okay, how about the corporate entities? When will they lose their power over the collective and the collective become sovereign?
That involves trust and more human connection. Currently, you are not there. But as we had stated prior, around the year 2030 will be the beginnings of an institutional change. And we cannot say that there would even be an institution at that point. We do not find it negative or positive. We just find that there is more human unity.
Okay, another food question. Vegan, vegetarian, do we need to be either or?
In our examples of being humane or inhumane, the current human conscious collective would prefer to be at least vegetarian. And we would prefer this because we believe in being humane to our animals. Energy is in everything. And within the energy of eating an animal or an animal product, there is the energy of death that seems to consume the physical body. And although you are aware that you are not your bodies, again, your bodies serve you, so why and fill them and pull them into the death energy of eating something that has a soul.
Okay, how do you, what suggestions do you have for someone who is highly sensitive to energy? Sheila's asking about her niece, who's so sensitive to people, and even certain stones being in a room, she feels bombarded by this energy. Sensitive human.
Compassion, redirect her. When you focus and redirect your empathy and turn it into compassion, the problem with empathy is that you are not going in this direction. You are taking something in here. If you are empathically sensitive in this way, you are taking things in, but you are not releasing. But in compassion, you're observing. You take something in to the extent that you can, not too much, and then you release something, that compassion, that love. And there's a difference between compassion and empathy. If you, particularly with children, redirect them towards giving and service and compassionate expression, that will cause them to not even focus on their surroundings of overstimulation.
Very good. We are just about at the top of the hour and have a final question that I see. Mm-hmm. And that is, will there be a shift in the Earth's axis around 2025, causing any disasters, natural or otherwise?
As we state about disillusion, if the current conscious collective shifts from 49% to say 51, this could indeed occur. We are currently not aligned to that. And the 51% of the collective that are shifting into 4th and 5th dimension are growing, exponentially growing. So you are not alone.
Okay. What is the cause of the sharp increase of people experiencing anxiety?
Humans feel attacked. There is so much anger in the human conscious collective. And if you feel attacked, there is a level of reflection when you are choosing what you are seeing, because there is a part of you that attacks you. How do you talk to yourselves? How do you criticize yourselves? How are you mean and attacking to yourselves? When you experience that and you understand this, then anger becomes power, and anger is swiftly transmuted into empowerment versus destruction. It can be a temporary thing, a catalyst for growth and change, or it can be pure and imminent destruction. Which are you going to choose? Because the anxiety that is in the collective is within the victims. And if you feel aligned towards powerlessness and the beliefs that produce anxiety, you are experiencing a belief that you are attacked. And again, if you are attacked, consider the level of you that is attacking you and forgive you for attacking you. Start there, forgiveness first, and then go deeper into your self-love practices.
How does that play into judging anything at all? I mean, does that mean we observe an action, even if we call it an attack? Is that a judgment?
If it feels like an attack, then yes, you are judging that something is separate, something is wrong, something is bad and shouldn't be. And in that moment, it helps you expand. You formulate an exception and you separate temporarily so that you can have space to heal and you feel safe to do so, and you call those boundaries. But that is simply self-love. And you do that so that you can be whole and feel more powerful. You do not align to attack in that moment. And then the other person begins to cease their alleged attacks. And then eventually there will be forgiveness and unity. And that is the nature of expansion within the 3rd dimension.
Okay, I only see one question left. What's the one thing we can do every day that would be most beneficial to us in our awakening and ascension?
Breathe and meditate. Just breathe. Just calm down. Don't take yourself so seriously. Wake up in the morning and understand that this is a dream in which you will play.
Did you have any additional questions that you gathered from another place?
No, that was it for me.
Oh, here's another one that snuck right in about empathetic humans. They tend to be overweight. Does having a thicker body help, or is this just a belief?
It is a belief that begins to be true. In empathy, they feel attacked, therefore they put up quite literally a shield of body fat. And when they are ready to be vulnerable and trust and certainty again, the weight will come off.
This is why I was 10 pounds heavier last year. Beautiful answer. Thank you. I see no more questions.
Yeah, I'm feeling complete too. It was good. And It was interesting. They didn't say what I thought they were going to say. There was a lot of talks about transmutation of the natural disasters and how we could focus on our spiritual practice. And I am happy about that. And then it's interesting.
Some of the numbers were really interesting. I would have to go back to even remember. I wasn't taking notes, but about the percentages of effect back and forth. That was really fascinating, Pamela.
Yeah, I didn't expect that either. So, yeah.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you, Candace. I'm going to stop our broadcast now. I love you guys. And on Monday, we'll be doing the same thing, for our level 3 Patreon members. We'll be doing the same thing, Candace and I, to channel the late and great and ever-present powerful Dolores Cannon. Same time, same place. She gets so excited every time. I will probably transfer that because she is incredibly powerful, but we'll see how she's feeling about it and what she tells me to do.
I won't sleep at all Sunday night. This is very exciting.
Yeah. So I'm going to post it so that you guys can put up your questions well in advance. And I'll probably be posting that today and keeping track and writing down your questions, and we'll come do it again. And it's good. I'm enjoying this. And you can find Candace on quantumhealingpractitioners.com. And you can find me on patreon.com/Pamela Aaralyn, as you already know, because everyone that's watching this is from there. Just a reminder. But just in case you're not, now you know where to get these channelings. We do them all the time. All right. Bye, guys. Namaste.